Hello friends, happy Friday. I'm sorry that this video is coming to you a little late, but thank you so much for being patient. Today we will read chapter 3 of Cupid Doesn't Flip Hamburgers from the Adventures of the Bailey School Kids series. But before we go over our questions and I give you the new ones, we are going to say our Kids on Course motto. So you know what to do, just repeat after me. I am smart. I believe in myself. I am a great kid. I have courage. I deserve to learn. Today is going to be awesome! And of course it is because it is the weekend. So, the questions that we had from last week were, question 1, how was the cafeteria decorated? And the cafeteria was decorated in all hearts, everything with pink and red and white. So it was decorated to fit the upcoming holiday, which is Valentine's Day. And then question 2 is, what was the food in the shape of? And everything on their plate except the milk was in the shape of a heart. And the milk carton even had hearts on it. So now we understand that Mrs. Rosenblum really loves Valentine's Day. So the questions for today, we only have 2. Question 1, why were Eddie's actions towards Carrie wrong? And you guys will understand what I'm asking once you hear how he is treating Carrie. And question 2, what signs are there that show Carrie likes Eddie? So be looking out for those 2. What actions towards Carrie were wrong of Eddie to do? Or what were Eddie's actions towards Carrie that were wrong? And then 2, what signs show that Carrie likes Eddie? And that first question is either what actions or why were his actions wrong. So now that we have those, let's go ahead and get started. There's that prissy Carrie kissing up to Mrs. Rosenblum. Eddie pointed as he slurped the last of his cherry jello. No fair, Melody said. Mrs. Rosenblum is giving Carrie a heart bun and a cookie. Carrie gets everything, Liza sighed. Carrie's dad owned the Bailey City Bank. Carrie was always bringing new toys to her school or bragging about something her dad bought her. I'll make sure she gets a hard time, Eddie said with an evil grin. He grabbed his half-empty lunch tray and headed for Carrie. Mrs. Rosenblum finished pinning the button on Carrie and spun her around to face Eddie. Why, hello, Eddie, Carrie said with a mouthful of cookie. Fancy meeting you here. Yeah, it's a miracle, Eddie said. Would you like my apple slice? I'd love it, Carrie said, snapping it off Eddie's tray. But then I'd adore anything of yours. She batted her eyelashes at Eddie before nibbling on the apple. Eddie gave her a funny look, then rushed back to her seat. You can see she has those love-struck eyes. I can't believe you gave Carrie your apple, Melody said. I thought you hated her. I can't stand her, Eddie agreed. I dropped it on the floor. That's why I gave it to her. That wasn't very nice, Liza said. Speaking of nice, do you see the way Carrie keeps looking at you? Howie asked Eddie. The 4 kids turned to see Carrie tossing her blonde hair and fluttering her eyebrows in their direction. And yes, that did say eyebrows, not lashes. Melody giggled. I think she's been bitten by the love bug. You guys are crazy. Eddie shook his head and looked at Carrie. She smiled and blew him a kiss. Eddie splashed through a mud puddle on his way across the playground the next morning. Melody, Liza, and Howie were huddled under a huge oak tree comparing answers to their math homework. Number 13 has to be 342 hearts, Melody was explaining. Howie shook his head. You weren't supposed to add. You should have subtracted. Liza frowned. I multiplied. What did you get for the answer, Eddie? Eddie looked at his friends like they'd just sprouted broccoli out of their ears. What homework? Melody rolled her eyes. You'll never make it out of 3rd grade unless you do the homework. I'll help you, a sweet voice interrupted. The 4 friends turned to face Carrie. She winked at Eddie. I have all the answers, and mine are always right. Eddie kicked his foot into the mud, splattering Carrie's pink boots with brown goo. I don't need any help, he said, especially from you. Then he stomped toward the school. But I don't mind helping you, Carrie insisted as she grabbed his elbow. I brought you something, too. Eddie skidded to a stop. You're trying to get me back for yesterday's paper wad. You'd give me the wrong answers just to get me in trouble. Don't be silly, Carrie said, batting her eyelashes at him. Here, this proves I'm not mad at you. She reached inside her book bag and pulled out a red rose. I even snipped the thorns off so you won't get pricked. Eddie backed away and bumped into Melody. It's not every day a guy gets a flower from his girlfriend, Melody said with a giggle. Carrie is not my girlfriend, Eddie yelled as he ran into the school. Carrie sighed and flipped her golden curls behind her ears. Poor Eddie, I'll just have to try harder. Try harder to do what? Liza asked from behind Melody. Carrie looked at Melody, Howie, and Liza as if she were going to tell them the answers to next week's science test. But then she shook her head and followed Eddie into the school. Never mind, you just wouldn't understand. Something strange is going on at Bailey Elementary, Melody said. Howie nodded. I never dreamed I'd see the day when Carrie was nice to Eddie. It's almost like she's in love with him, Liza said softly. Don't be silly, Melody said. Godzilla is more lovable than Eddie. The three friends nodded and went inside the school building. Once inside, the kids stopped dead in their tracks. Maybe Liza's right, Howie said. Melody started laughing so hard she snorted through her nose. It looks like Carrie has Eddie cornered. Sure enough, Carrie had grabbed Eddie's notebook from the water fountain. I'd love to carry your books, she was telling him. Eddie tugged as hard as he could, but Carrie wouldn't let go. Give it to me, Eddie jerked his notebook one last time, tearing the cover in half. Now look what you've done, Eddie yelled. And there's another picture. You can see that the notebook is torn in half. I'm sorry, Carrie said. I'll get you a new one. Eddie gave her a look and dashed into the classroom. Melody, Howie, and Liza followed and started teasing Eddie. It looks like Carrie's fallen for you, Howie whispered. Eddie took a pencil out of his desk and shook his head. She's just trying to make me mad. It looks like love to me, Melody nodded toward the doorway. Carrie stood there straightening the heart pin on her pink sweater. Then she strode toward Eddie and paused beside his desk. She smiled and put a chocolate kiss on his desk. She winked and walked to her own desk. From behind him, Eddie heard Melody giggle as she started singing. Eddie and Carrie, sitting in a tree. Kissing. First comes love. But before she could sing any more, Eddie took the candy kiss and flung it over her shoulder. It landed with a definite thunk on Melody's forehead. That is all we have for Chapter 3. So before we go, I'm just going to remind you of our 2 questions one last time. Question 1, why were Eddie's actions towards Carrie wrong? And question 2, what signs show that Carrie likes Eddie? That is all I have for you. Have a great weekend, and I will see you on Monday. Bye, everybody.